Behind this gate is the hobby unit, an all-women's prison. We're here to see Sandra Jean Melgar. This is the first time she's agreed to an interview. Sandra wants to talk to us about why she's innocent.
They got it wrong. They got it completely wrong.
Sandra and Jim Melgar lived in the suburbs of Houston.
He was a great husband, took good care of me.
And were celebrating their 32nd anniversary. But their romantic evening turned into a nightmare.
What's happened?
What happened? I'm trying to remember.
Jim was found stabbed to death 31 times. And Sandra tied up in a closet.
Well, I think that Sandra had been planning this for a long time.
A jury found her guilty of murder.
Things just didn't make that much sense anywhere you looked.
But is she the killer? In 1978, Jim and Sandra met at Lamar High School as seniors.
1978. This looks like it's it.
And the yearbook is still there.
And here's Sandra. There she is.
She was the ROTC girls drill team commander who fell head over heels.
Yeah, there he is.
For Jim.
Jim Melgar.
2 years after high school, they got married. He took a job as a computer programmer, and she, a nurse. 5 years later, they had their only daughter, Elizabeth, and were baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses.
They're an awesome couple, really loving, just like we are.
Bob and Patsy Laurel were friends with the Melgars.
Oh my God, she made the best sangria.
The couples loved to trade off hosting costume parties at their homes.
It was pretty crazy, y'all.
Yeah, everybody dress up.
Is it surreal looking back, thinking, how did we get here?
It's like a nightmare. This doesn't happen to people like us.
And it just felt very eerie. There's something not right.
Marissa Campos is Jim and Sandra's niece.
Take me back to that day. Who invited you over for dinner?
My uncle did.
So you get there, you pull up to the house. What happens?
Ring the doorbell, knock on the door, no answer. At this point, we're thinking, okay, they're getting ready, maybe they're not even up yet.
The only thing they noticed, an open garage door. Inside, the unlocked door leading into the house gave Marissa's father a way in.
So my dad's already in the living room. Come on, come sit down, let's make ourselves at home. And we're like, no. This is just, something doesn't feel right. And then it was at that point where there was just mumbling. And then it was finally, we heard help, help.
It was Sandra.
The chair pushed the door.
Jim's brother, Herman Melgar, says inside the bathroom, a chair was leaning against the closet door. Inside, Sandra was all tied up, her arms and feet bound. So tight, he and his wife needed scissors to free her. And when they did, they realized Sandra was laying in her own feces and urine.
You two are the only people that saw Sandra tied up. Is there any way in your mind she could have done that herself?
No. Para nosotros es imposible que lo haya hecho ella.
Herman found his brother stabbed to death in his closet, Jim's feet loosely bound with a telephone cord, and a red rope laying across his body. The murder weapon, a kitchen knife, tossed in the bathtub.
There's just no way that she could have done that to him.
But that night, deputies made this video showing how Sandra could have staged the crime scene to look like a home invasion, pulling the chair against the door from inside the closet. All while detectives were questioning her at homicide headquarters.
I didn't hear anything. I wish I had heard something. I didn't.
See that what we're seeing there, the physical evidence that's there, and what you're telling us, is just not adding up, Sandra.
What were Jim and Sandra doing before the murder? They celebrated their anniversary with dinner at a neighborhood Mexican restaurant. and then settled into their jacuzzi at home. Sandra says they spent around 2 hours in the tub. Then when their 4 dogs started barking, Jim got out and never returned. Remember, initially she told investigators about her memory getting fuzzy.
I didn't hear anything. I wish I had heard something. I didn't.
But after this initial interview with investigators, her story changed. She remembered seeing a young girl as she was being tied and put in the closet.
She was looking at the person behind me that was tying me up. That was it. She looked angry.
And initially, you didn't share that with police. Why?
Because I didn't remember. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure that had happened. I confused that with it happening after my brother-in-law and his wife and his kids came in. I thought, I thought she had come in with them.
You say you blacked out at the moment your husband was being murdered. But people watching might think, that sounds so convenient.
Yeah, it's not a blackout. I have seizures. And I had a lump in my head, so I was hit. And then I went into a seizure, more than likely. I mean, no one was there to actually see it, but that's how it felt like when I woke up.
Sandra told investigators that night about her history of health problems.
How often do you have seizures like that?
I've been getting them more lately. I'm not able to drive anymore.
How frequent?
At least once a month, maybe.
Investigators thought the timing of Sandra's memory lapse was suspicious. They even tried to charge her with murder that night. But it took another 1.5 years for them to make an arrest and another 3 years of delays before her case went to trial. Inside the Harris County District Attorney's office, we went page by page through the case file. And we met prosecutor Colleen Barnett, who has her own theories about what happened inside the Melgar home.
I don't know exactly what happened, but it's a suggestion that because there were sex toys underneath the pillow and the dining room chair had been moved over to the bedroom with a bench behind it, that it was possible that they had been engaging in some kind of, maybe she was giving him a massage.
She showed us how easy it is.
You can adjust it.
To tie yourself up.
It seems very Hollywoodish and far-fetched.
Sandra Gitta Thompson is a professor at University of Houston's law school.
When you first looked at Sandra Melgar's case, what stood out?
The main thing that stands out is just the physical evidence, the lack of physical evidence.
That was the backbone of the defense team's case. No physical evidence and a sloppy investigation. They argued the bloody handle of a safe was never tested, and detectives missed a backpack stuffed with electronics dropped in the garage. Thompson calls it tunnel vision.
Investigators too quickly dismissing other possible theories and ignoring evidence that might have pointed in a different direction.
I will say that both mine and probably my fellow jurors' guilt or innocence swung back and forth throughout the entire trial.
He's one of 8 men and 4 women who decided Sandra Melgar's fate.
What was your first impression of Sandra?
How could this diminutive-looking middle-aged lady possibly have committed this crime? It was frankly incredulous to see it at first. Didn't compute. I didn't think she could have done it at first.
For him, the tipping point, there were no signs of forced entry, and the blood was only in one part of the house.
So a breach to a vein, artery, or vessel.
CELESTINA Rossi is the blood spatter expert who testified at trial.
There's, a fight, but yet you still have candles that are burning that are upright and aren't knocked over. You have drawers that are opened, to make it appear that someone rifled through, but yet you have nothing missing.
Also strange, Rossi says Jim didn't grab the gun in his closet.
And that's something that, you're never going to shoot your spouse. Even if she's coming at you with a knife, you're going to try to disarm her.
But she says the blood.
It spatters, and so you see these individual spatters.
Tells a story slightly different from the prosecution's theory.
Based on what I can do with reconstruction and bloodstain, I have him out or in their closet. Nothing I have puts him in the chair.
The chair is where the prosecutor believed Jim was sitting when he was first stabbed. But Rossi says the blood dripping down it came from Jim fighting back while standing in the closet.
If he put his right hand up and that artery was breached, that puts him in direct line with that chair.
None of Sandra's blood or DNA was found on Jim or the murder weapon.
If what you say is true, and he was stabbed dozens of times, how is it that there's none of Sandra's DNA on him?
I don't know. I don't know why there wasn't any DNA found. I do know that if there had been DNA found on his body that came back to Sandra, it would have been explained by the sheer fact that they were married.
But there was unidentified male and female DNA found in the house. And the defense team says a TV, other electronics, and prescription pills were stolen. They say it all lines up with Sandra's story about being hit in the head during a home invasion.
I have pain in my head. Here.
Like what?
Like I got hit on the head.
Sandra told us she had no motive. There was no affair or financial gain.
Sandra, did you kill your husband?
No, I did not kill my husband. No. I didn't kill my husband.
And the prosecutor saying that because she's a Jehovah's Witness, she would rather kill than divorce her husband was far-fetched.
It was very upsetting. Of course, it was very upsetting. She didn't understand her beliefs at all. She just twisted everything. She made up things. That's not what practicing Jehovah's Witnesses believe.
But the jury foreman says the speculation on motive was not something they took into consideration.
The prosecutor's testimony, right, it all made sense. Now, was it absolutely provable? No, but it's the only thing that made sense.
The initial vote once deliberations began: 5 guilty, 4 not guilty, and 3 undecided. Another convincing factor, the foreman told us Sandra's medical records.
During the trial, the prosecution had acquired all the medical records and showed and just listed the dates up there and everything else of her doctor's visits. No seizure, no seizure, no seizure, getting better, you know, that kind of stuff.
Sandra told us just because her seizure condition was stable didn't mean she wasn't experiencing symptoms.
I believe that for one thing, people don't realize what a seizure is or what it feels like to go into a seizure, and then when you come out of a grand mal seizure, you know, you don't remember a lot of stuff.
But the things you were hearing from Sandra, the jury never did. She never took the stand to testify. For the jury foreman, what stuck in his head, he didn't buy the story Sandra told investigators in that original interview.
We watched almost all the police video over again, and that's what brought the other people over until we had a unanimous verdict.
The jury sentenced Sandra to 27 years behind bars.
And we figured that at that point she would be in her early 70s and maybe have a chance of seeing her grandchildren at that point. So it was a humane decision, frankly. Do we think this woman's a threat to society? None of us thought that.
Sandra is appealing her conviction. Her defense attorneys argued the evidence was legally insufficient and she didn't receive a fair trial.
While Sandra is behind bars, her friends still believe in her innocence.
How could they find somebody like her guilty of murdering her husband that she loved so much? Right, Lola? And your mama? You want your mama home, honey?
Her dog Lola lives with Patsy and Bob, and they're watching over Jim's remains.
She always thought that she would go first because of her illnesses, that he would always survive way beyond her.
Now, Sandra's only pictures from the outside world come from her grandchildren.
I know that really hurts me. I miss them so much. So, I mean, I'm just gonna keep fighting this until I'm out of here. That's all I can do.